All right, guys, so we got to talk about neocon and Nikki Haley. And don't get me wrong, I kind of like Nikki Haley, but she's definitely the old guard here, okay? But regardless, we're going to talk about it. She's been ruthlessly attacked in the media despite having minority status, okay? They tell us, the wokes tell us that, hey, you're not supposed to say anything bad about minorities who are in politics or major positions of power because that's racist, right? Especially, again, if they have multiple infinity stones of wokeness. Like, for example, if they're, black, gay, they're a certain religion, you can't say anything about them, okay? And in Nikki Haley's case, she's a woman, and she is Indian, right? And you would think that the mainstream liberal media would lay off of her with the attacks because, again, she has, some infinity stones of wokeness, right? However, that's not the case, okay? She's been attacked from all angles because your infinity stones of wokeness get canceled out if you happen to be conservative or Republican, okay? All that goes out the window. You might as well be a straight white male, okay? She's been called out of her prime by people like Don Lemon, okay? And now she's getting attacked by the cackling hens on The View, who, again, otherwise would be standing up for so-called women of color, but in this case, they're not, okay? They're trying to take a sledgehammer to Nikki Haley because she disagrees with them politically. Take a look.
So, it's President's Day, and our current president, Biden, is starting to get more support from progressive circles to run for a second term. But, of course, some Democrats and Republicans have been saying that our government needs to evolve along with the people who live here. Now that's what they're saying, suddenly. Everybody said, oh, yeah, it should reflect all of us. Okay. Well, here's a clip.
Gen Z and millennials make up about a third of the country, but we're nowhere near a third of the government, and I think we need a government that needs to look like the country.
It's time for a new generation of Republican leadership.
The Washington establishment has failed us over and over and over again. It's time for a new generation of leadership.
You're not a new generation. You're 51. What are you talking about?
Compared to DC, that's a new generation.
Well, but it's not a new generation. She may be younger than most of those people, but her rhetoric is the same. She's saying the same BS, and I love the young kid, but you know what? The only way you're going to get younger people to run, dude, is if you're out there talking to people and saying run. Don't sit here and say we need it to look like us. We know that, but we're not going to vote for people who don't have our best interests at heart. Yeah. Okay?
And also people that don't have experience. I think what's interesting in this country, and I think we're one of the only countries in the world that don't value age, don't value experience. I mean, I remember when my grandmothers were alive, I would sit at their feet and just take in the lessons and everything that they had to say. And now it's like, oh, you're too old. Well, really, because when that person is gone, so is that institutional knowledge. And it just makes me sick. I think we have a clip of Nikki Haley.
The America I see, the permanent politician will finally retire. We'll have term limits for Congress and mandatory mental competency tests for politicians over 75 years old.
Or how dare she say that someone over 75 needs some sort of mental acuity test?
Yeah, so let me address Sunny Holston here, okay? Because it's absolutely hilarious to me that so-called liberal women of color, right, in defense of their white savior, Joe Biden, they want to all of a sudden act like experience and age matters, right? But not when it comes to diversity and inclusion / affirmative action hiring. Like, for example, Corinne Jean-Pierre, right? John Kirby clearly should have got that job over her, okay? He has more experience than her. He's clearly better than her. He's older than her. But you didn't hear The View complaining and saying, hey, maybe the White House didn't make the best hire, right? Age and experience only matters when Republicans are saying, hey, maybe some of the people that are running for president are too old, right? Maybe some of the people that are in office are too old. They're not mentally capable of actually making decisions that are best for this country. All of a sudden, Democrats want to act offended. Right? And it's a projection because they know that Biden is a old blabbering fool.
Our natural wonders you know, inspire, and the reflection inspires our to take action. You know, America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping, traveling with him. We traveled 17,000 miles when I was vice president. I don't know that for a fact. A solid meeting with they make a very good point. Here's the deal. Here's what drives the driver in the states that are affected. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did. And back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. In those days, you used to remember the straight razor, you'd bang them on the curb, get them rusty, put them in a rain barrel, get them rusty. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Yeah, so according to Sonny Holston, an old man, right, 70-plus-year-old man talking about how he loves kids jumping on his lap, should not have some type of mental test for office, or shouldn't be questioned, right? Don't question him, okay? Amazing stuff. Now, in regards to Whoopi and her comments, I hate to do this, but I think that I disagree with why Whoopi is attacking Nikki Haley, because she really doesn't know why she's attacking Nikki Haley. She's doing it because she's being paid and told that, hey, you need to attack Nikki Haley, right? You women of color, go out there and attack Nikki Haley, okay? But what she said is kind of true in regards to Nikki Haley not necessarily bringing anything new to the table, but talking about how she's a new generation of politician. Like, for example, how she's rehashing the old neocon rhetoric about how we need to be funding this war and that war in this country and that country. Take a look.
We have the backs of our friends, and we hold our enemies to account. And, you know, whether it's Ukraine or Israel, we take care of them because it's about freedom. And we can never stop fighting for freedom.
There is that popular strain, and a lot of MAGA, that wants the Ukraine gravy train, financially and otherwise, to stop. And even there's a growing Republican growing Republican support to say, wait a minute, checks and balances here. What are we doing giving all this money to Ukraine? Where do you come down on the money, on the military, whether it be fighter jets, X, Y, and Z?
Biden was slow to the take. Yeah. He should have given Ukraine what they needed right when this started, and we'd be in a totally different place right now. This isn't a war about Ukraine. This is a war about freedom. And I don't think we need to put troops on the ground. I don't think we need to write them blank checks. But they have the passion to fight for their own freedom. Give them the ammunition to do it. Get with our NATO allies and say, hey, we're not the only ones. You've got to do it too. And let them win this fight. But I'll tell you what, if they win this fight, you won't hear anything from Russia, China, or Iran. If they lose this fight, Russia's not going to stop at Ukraine. They're going to go into Poland and the Baltics, and we've got a world war on our hands. We have to make sure we send a message to every enemy that if you mess with our friends, you're messing with us, and you don't want to do that.
And that, therefore, is America first, in essence.
It is taking care of America because we're preventing wars.
Yeah, preventing wars by fighting a war, right? Yes, Nikki Haley claims that she doesn't want to write a blank check to Ukraine, but she would have sent weapons faster to Ukraine than Joe Biden. Amazing stuff, right? This person claims to be a new generation of politician, but she sounds like George W. Bush and with a vagina. I mean, that's just what it is. But I have to defend Nikki Haley here because Nikki Haley is being unfairly attacked, okay, from the mainstream liberal media. And, you know, they're using Indian folks on MSNBC to basically use the same rhetoric against her that they use against black people who disagree with the left by basically saying that she is a white supremacist and that all skin folk ain't kinfolk, right? Take a look.
To quote Zora Neale Hurston, not all skin folk or kinfolk. Nikki Haley instead is the Dinesh D'Souza of Candace Owens. She's the alpha Karen with brown skin. And for white supremacists and racists, she's the perfect Manchurian candidate. And instead of applauding her, I am just disgusted by people like Nikki Haley who know better, whose parents were the beneficiaries, as Asha said, of the 1965 Immigration Nationality Act, which passed thanks to those original BLM protesters and the Civil Rights Act. Her father came here because he was a professor. He taught at a historically black college in South Carolina. That's how she became the proud American that she is. And yet, what does she do? Like all these model minorities, which, by the way, is a strategy of white supremacy to use Asians in particular as a cudgel against black folks. Instead of pulling us up from the bootstraps and pulling others from the bootstrap, we're taught to take your boot and put it on the neck of poor browns, immigrants, refugees, and black folks. And that's what she did in her ad. So I see her and I feel sad, Mehdi, because she uses her brown skin as a weapon against poor black folks and poor brown folks, and she uses her brown skin to launder white supremacist talking points. And the reason why I feel sad, because no matter what she does, Mehdi, it'll never be enough. They'll never love her. And if you don't believe me, what did Ann Coulter tell proud American Nikki Haley 2 days ago? Go back to your country. Nikki,
go back.
They'll never love you.
Go back.
It ain't worth it.
Go back to where you
back.
came from, which is the ultimate racist insult, and of course the title of your book.
Yeah, so here's MSNBC, who brings on a ton of brown people. I don't know what brown means, by the way. I'm brown, right? I'm more brown than I am black, so I'm not sure exactly what brown means. But apparently brown must be for Asian, right? Or I don't know, Latino or something. Not white, okay? And not black. I think that's what brown basically means, okay? But anyways, MSNBC tries to say, this is racism, right? Racism. While again, bringing on a whole bunch of brown people to tell Nikki Haley how to think as a so-called brown person, right? You're not supposed to be conservative as a brown person. Then you're not really actually brown, right? You're not really actually Indian, okay? As if all Indians or Asians or whatever you want to call them, they're supposed to be Democrat, okay? All skin folk ain't kinfolk. Again, absolutely incredible, okay? This is the network trying to lecture people on racism while launching racist attacks against Nikki Haley, right? Using brown faces to smear brown people who disagree with Democrats and liberals, which to me seems to be textbook racism. This idea that you're not a real minority or that you're not really, who you are or whatever because you don't agree with Democrats and liberals. Absolutely amazing, right? Absolutely amazing. They do the exact same thing to Indian folks that they do to black people, okay? They say, hey, you're not really black if you don't agree with the Democrats, if you're not liberal, okay? You are all types of racial slurs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're launching the same exact attack against Nikki Haley. They're not criticizing her where she legitimately deserves to be criticized, which is that, hey, she may have some, policy issues, right? Particularly, in my opinion, in this video, she wants to continue to fund the war in Ukraine and stuff like that. If you want to criticize her for that, fine. But all this talk about Nikki Haley and her skin color and her being a woman and her, being conservative and, being Indian and a woman, it's just ridiculous to me. Right? That's not legitimate criticism. They're just mad because they can't stand when minorities disagree with them, right? When there's minorities that break the mold. She became governor of South Carolina. Clearly, people of South Carolina don't care that much about race or sex, right? To elect an Indian woman to lead the state, okay? Again, I hate having to defend Nikki Haley as much as I am, but I will defend her, a lot, okay, against some of these attacks from the liberal media against her that aren't really based off any real policy disagreements, anything like that, as much as just based off the fact that, well, she's a woman and she's brown, quote unquote, and she's not a Democrat, right? Because if this is a so-called woman of color that was liberal, we all know what the left would be saying. Any attacks against them are racist, right? It's racist, it's sexist, it's homophobia, it's bigotry, right? This is what they be saying. Look at George Santos. George Santos, who's gay, right, and Latino, they say whatever they want about him. They tee off on him. But again, if he was a Democrat who was a liberal, they say, no, you can't attack him because attacking him means that you're racist. It means that you hate Latinos, you're xenophobic. It's just amazing how that works. So-called minorities that are liberal are untouchable. You can't attack them. You can't say anything about them. But conservatives who are minorities, it's open season on them. You can say whatever you want. It doesn't matter how racist it is, right? It's truly fascinating, the double standard here. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.